Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and a very good afternoon. You are tuning in to Radio IKIM in the program Man and Nature produced by Hajah Mazlina Ismail. I'm your host, Sheikh Muhammad Saifuddin and Sheikh Muhammad Saleh from the Center for Science and Environment Studies, Institute of Islamic Understanding Malaysia or IKIM. Inshallah, in today's episode, we have an interesting topic for discussion, and that topic is working with microbes. And to discuss this topic, ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted to introduce our guest today, all the way from the United Kingdom, Mr. Syed Muhammad Daniel bin Syed Muhammad, who is a doctoral researcher at the Department of Materials Science and Engineering, University of Sheffield. Assalamualaikum and a very warm welcome to you, Mr. Syed Daniel.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you for the invitation.
It's my pleasure. How are you today?
Today is being a good start of the morning. Now currently is morning, so 8 a.m. It's a good start to have the pleasure to give some or share something here.
Okay. Inshallah. And we'll be talking about microbes. Probably as an introduction, I'm sure many of our listeners are actually aware of the term microbes or microorganisms. Maybe as an introduction, could you perhaps enlighten our listeners as to what we mean when we say microbes or when we say microorganisms?
Okay. Again, thank you, Dr. Sheikh Muhammad Saifuddin, for this really amazing invitation and for the chance to share here. So, to address what is microbes. So, microbes are actually microscopic organism, which is living things that is really small in size. So, you cannot see by naked eye. You need instrument to see them. And they can be single cell, which is solely one organism by only one cell, and also a colony of cells. So there are several types of microorganisms available in our nature. We can categorize them as bacteria, which is microbe that is inhabiting soil, water, living or even living organism. On ourselves, we have a lot of microbes actually living and symbiote or working together with us, creating a system, living system. So I can give one example of bacteria, which is E. coli. I think it's very famous bacteria, which is a bacteria that lives in your gut, in large intestine. So basically, they break down certain component of your food. So when you eat food, you have digestive system, and this bacteria are actually excreting some enzyme to assist the breakdown of this food for our body absorption. And another type of bacteria is L. acidophilus. I'm not sure if this is very commonly known, but this is type bacteria that is available in cultured drink like yogurt. So this is one, which is bacteria. Another type of microbe is fungi, such as yeast. Yeast is, I think everyone knows about yeast. We use it in bakery, and also another type of fungi is molds. So if you have expired food, just like bread, the green patches that is growing over time. So those are microbes as well, which is fungi. And another type of microbe that is available in nature is virus. I think virus is very well known of its ability to cause a range of diseases, just such as flu. And I can take our closest event on the event that we're currently living in, which is COVID-19 pandemic. It's caused by viruses. And also, given the size, which is very small, human actually takes a while to discover the existence of microbes. So, taking back from the 9th century, Rhazes or Fakhruddin Ar-Razi, he actually wrote a book regarding measles and smallpox, which is measles and smallpox, to describe the behavior of microbe in this contagious disease. So another work which is done by a Turkish scientist called Aksham Saddin. So he mentioned about behavior of contagious disease as well in his work called The Material of Life or Madatul Hayat. So this is in 15th century. So this scientist or this Islamic um, researcher,
Scholars.
I might say, they they actually describe that this disease is not coming out of nowhere, but there's something like seed actually transferring from one human to another. So this is how at the beginning human describe the existence of microbe, but they don't have microscope, they couldn't see yet, but they can describe it. And also Ibn Sina, another example, he described about tuberculosis and many other diseases which is contagious, which is caused by microbe. And also, this is like how they describe, and also later on in the 16th century, Anton van Leeuwenhoek, a Dutch microbiologist. So he started to pioneer the field of microbiology and also pioneered the technique of microscopy to really observe this kind of creature. And also later on, he established the microbiology field. And also after that, Robert Hooke also established the field of microscopy. So he not only observed the microbes, but all small things that exist in our nature. And also, despite actually, even though they are small in size, so microbe basically available or exist literally everywhere. So in the air, in your table, everywhere. So if you are experienced in science subject in your school, you might remember an experiment when you culture cells. You have a petri dish with
Yes.
agar plates. So the teacher might ask you to put your finger on the plate, put one another plate to in toilet under your table, and grow or culture it over a day and see the growth. So basically, microbes are everywhere, and it's actually part of our life. Yeah. So that's
Thank you.
basically the introduction. What is microbe?
Thank you for the explanation. I think that puts our next question in perspective. Now, before I go to the next question, actually, you have shared with us a few names of
Mhm.
scholars who have established the foundations for microbiology.
Yes.
One name that you mentioned, Arazi, he actually
Mhm.
differentiated between measles and
Measles and
smallpox,
smallpox. Yeah.
and that is a big contribution. And Ak Shamsuddin, also known as Sheikh Ak Shamsuddin, is
Hmm.
also the teacher to Sultan Muhammad Al Fatih. So he's a
Exactly.
very important figure in history. Now, moving on to the next question.
Mhm.
Now, you've explained the different types of microbes. Now,
Yeah.
how does science view microbes as living organisms?
I will start answering the question with a chapter in Quran, chapter 3, Surah Al Imran, verse 131, that Allah actually does not create things without any purpose. So indeed, glory to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So um, microbe is actually another living organism. So scientifically, they have established discipline, which is microbiology. I have mentioned in the introduction in a bit just now, to research or to study their role. So as a living organism, science actually see microbe as a component of the world that is really beneficial and have really prominent and important role in many aspects. So, in terms of studying the microbe itself, so science or scientists found that microbes has a really complex system. Means if you see in a microbe itself, or a bacteria, for example, you can find DNA, you can find cytosol, you can find mitochondria, and a lot of other components, biochemical reaction happening in only one single cell, which is like the size of the size between like 3 to 5 micron, which is amazing. So we cannot or never expect back then this size of organism can house a lot of biochemical reaction. So this complexity is actually not only complex in itself, but it complex in terms of forming an ecosystem as a microbial community, for example. So I'm giving you example. So for fungi, for example, so fungi actually has a really prominent role in rotting. So it breaks down organic matters in nature by producing digestive enzymes. So they also survive by taking up all this nutrient broke down and eventually maintaining the nutrient cycle in the nature. So if you imagine in the forest, we have leaves falling down all the time, but without microbe, all these leaves will stack up like forever without being breaking down, and no cycle will happen. So fungi or other microorganism will keep this the sustainability of this life cycle in nature. So another example, which is bacteria in nature, what they do is to also keep this nutrient cycle going. So basically bacteria has a good role in fixing nitrogen from the atmosphere into a living organism. So I'll give one example as in legume plants, um, like a peanut. So if you notice, peanut is living below the ground, so it actually hosts certain types of bacteria that fix nitrogen from the atmosphere. So that nitrogen is turned into nutrient, and later on we can like harvest and have it as our nutrient intake. And also fungi and bacteria, of course, important in sustaining this kind of nutrient cycle in nature. So moving on to another type of microorganism, which is virus, they work in different way. They might be notorious or like well known to cause a lot of deadly diseases like Ebola, HIV, even dengue, and also COVID-19. But however, virus has very special or unique ability to treat illness. So scientists actually make use of ability of virus to transfer genetic material in organism, and they adopt this special ability in gene therapy. So what they did was to infect or modify the virus with useful genetic material, and then infect a diseased person with some genetic diseases. Then this genetic material will help the patient to recover or uh, treat the illness in genetic level. So this is like a microbiology, or also I'm sorry, is a biochemistry area in scientific field. So another example of using virus in medicine is vaccination as well. So we have inactive virus, we infect a healthy person to build up their immune system, and finally the person with this will have preparation for future virulent infection. So basically, science uh, see microbes as living organism, and also some as part of our ecosystem, and it's very benefit that we can use in many aspects, which is environment, also in medicine. Yeah.
Right. Now, you mentioned about working with microbes for the benefits of humans and the environment. Maybe you would like to explain this further?
Okay. So I will start also with the chapter in the Quran, chapter 41, Surah Fusilat. verse 53, that Allah said, "We will show them our signs in the universe and their selves, and in their selves, until it becomes manifest to them, and that is it is the truth." So Allah mentioned that everything He created in the universe, in the nature, is actually a sign of uh, His mightiness, or His ability as a God. So micro is one of them, and as I have mentioned, microbes are really fascinating creatures with many essential role in nature, especially in terms of maintaining the sustainability. So, however, scientific exploration and advancement have very progressed very rapidly. So, humanity eventually can unlock the potential that the microbes uh, can offer or benefit humanity. So, one example I can give is the microbe that we use to treat environment. For example, if there is oil spillage in the sea, on the sea, so we use microbe uh, to break down the oil molecule, so we can manage the spillage more better, or more in assisted way. So this process is called bioremediation, but it's not only limited to treat oil spillage on the sea. There's another example that uh, people use microbe to treat um, soil or land. So any contaminant available on the land that is really not good for farming, not good for any other agriculture activities, we need to clean in a way by using the microbe. So the microbe has this complex metabolism to take up all this pollutant and then make um, the land or the soil usable again for agriculture activities. So this is one role of microbe that human use currently. And also another example is to treat water. So in water plant, when you use water at your home and then it drain out, and those water are collected and also treated. So how they treat this water is by using microbe as well. So microbe in a way has the ability to clear or remove contaminants before it being cycle again and use again in this domestic usage. So um, I would like to share another interesting part of using microbe in scientific field. So what I'm doing here in Sheffield is actually to do some research in using the bacteria to produce bioplastic. So um, what I'm doing here is to have microbe, feed them with certain um, substrate like carbon source as a food, and then they will produce certain type of plastic that we can collect and use in for certain application. So this bacterial fermentation not only using bacteria, which is part of nature, but in producing plastic, but it also has the value of sustainability, because this is like a living organism and it only can feed on organic matter. So one of the substrate or carbon source that we feed on the bacteria is cooking oil. Just imagine, we can use cooking oil. A lot of course, we have a lot of waste, cooking oil waste. Rather than throwing away, we feed this bacteria and we can produce plastic that we can use for another application. And this is an alternative to synthetic plastic, which is not biodegradable. So another thing, the sustainable value of being bio-based, this plastic, and also biodegradable. So we actually looking into the potential of using it in biomedical application, because it's really biocompatible. So basically, working with microbe also have a lot of aspect, but science is actually actively going for now, and then we are currently exploring them very extensively, because we yet to unlock a lot of things still.
Right.
Yeah.
Very interesting. I think the potentials of working with microbe is indeed endless. Like you said, it needs to be unlocked for
Yes.
us to be able to make use of its benefits. Now,
Yeah.
in your view, what is the perspective of Islam towards microbes?
Okay. In Islamic perspective, so we know that Islam is actually providing really holistic approach, and really acknowledge the universality of a lot of issues out here, and especially related to moral questions. So when we use something living, so there's moral question might come up, and we need to address it. So in Islam, of course, addresses these issues. So in this case, in scientific ventures, microbiology, for instance, aims to maintain steadfast within Islamic doctrine. So there's certain set of rule that we need to put, so that we cannot just use microbe in 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 a way that really detrimental, or bringing harm to the nature or human being generally. So the obligation to maintain this moral compass, especially by Muslim, is not, as I say, is not really limited only to health hazard actually. So if the microbe brings harm to yourself, in terms of your well-being, it also raises a question of extended act of humanity, uh, by taking extra step in interfering with nature. So when we work with microbe, we take the microbe, we put in the lab, we culture that. Um, we actually interfering with nature, especially when you do genetic engineering, you change the code. What will happen if this kind of bacteria that is genetically modified grow in lab, um, being put in nature, how it will affect the ecosystem? uh, is it detrimental, is it beneficial? So this is the question that we need to answer. So going back to Islamic perspective, even though microbes are not explicitly mentioned anywhere in the Quran or in the Hadith, uh, but some faculties can be associated directly based on generic attributes. Means some faculty, I mean, some ability that microbe has, that's actually we can acknowledge that they are really a living organism, and we need to really appreciate and in a way respect their their being. So for example, the physical power that microbe has, which is they're able to propagate, they're able to vegetate, which is dividing themselves and grow, and they're able to nourish, which is take up nutrient and survive, fits in a lot in literally every microbe as a living organism. On the other hand, their motility, which is they're able to move around, so by using a chemical reaction, by contracting and expanding. So this is a proof that actually they are living organism. So putting them in a scientific perspective, every single process within a microorganism is biochemical signaling, but still they are living organism. So uh, as a part of nature, so Islam sees every living organism um, as something that is we need to respect, and also we need to appreciate. So never undermine them, because without them we cannot do. Every single system in the world will not work, especially in a biological sense. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, definitely we have risks and hazards associated with microbes. And could you perhaps share with us as to how microbes are handled in order to mitigate any risk or dangers posed by them?
Okay. So yeah, of course we can use microbe in many ways, but you know that microbes also bring harm. So in order to utilize or to benefit from them, you cannot only just take and use, but you need to beware about what risk and danger they may pose when you are doing the research or using them. So for this, the microorganism, mainly those that are infectious, are categorized in particular classification to enable recognition and all related risks they might pose during handling. So especially this is in laboratory setting, of course. So for instance, in the lab, a specific protocol is necessary to be followed in handling microorganism. So not only to mitigate risk but also to avoid contamination of other experiment that is going on in the same lab. And also, for example, in the lab we have biosafety cabinet, which is an instrument that we can work in sterile condition. So it is confined and sterile space. So this is important to avoid cross contamination, the escape of the microbe to the outside or to the environment. And also another thing is the importance of using personal protective equipment such as gloves and also lab coats. Also, in certain cases, you need to wear goggles for some more messier work. And also, um, there is classification in terms of danger. There's type, for example, there's type 1 microbe and type 2 microbe, which is type 2 is more dangerous, which you need um, more action or more care in terms of handling them. So this is what really happening in scientific world generally. So so we need to acknowledge not only towards human, any microbial contamination poses risk to environment as well. So like I mentioned before, if you do genetically modify organism, which is like bacteria, if it escape to the environment, you need to assess what effect, rather good or bad, it will introduce as general. So it is really important in scientific field to mitigate risk and avoid harm in many ways. Yeah.
Right. We are actually coming towards the end of the program. Perhaps as a conclusion, maybe you'd like to share your view with regards to the type of relationship that humans should have with microbes.
Okay. So based on what I've been mentioned throughout uh, the 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 session today is that we use micro in many aspects for our benefit, of course. So we can conclude that microbes and all microorganisms have their role, and due to scientific advancement, so human managed to discover more potential and benefit, which is we yet to unlock a lot in many aspects. So there are one or not one. They have a lot. There's a lot of kind of microbes out there. Each one of them has different role and also characteristic. So they have outstanding ability despite their really minuscule size. So however, it depends on us, okay, who have been granted the stewardship of the world or khalifatullah, to responsibly manage these valuable resources, and also to create goodness or to create harm. So a lesson that we can learn that the usage of microbe as biological weapon, as an example, is happening before. So I can give one example. In 1916, Nordic rebel has used a bacteria, this microbe. I'm not really sure it's bacteria or virus, but they use it towards Imperial Russian army. And also there's attack using anthrax in 2001 in United States, which they use this microorganism uh, as a weapon, which is detrimental, bringing harm to people, which is very despicable. We cannot do that, of course, ethically or in any aspect. It's not acceptable. So, addressing your question just now, the relationship that we should have towards microbes, um, uh, we as a Khalifatullah, we need to manage how we use them and benefit them properly instead of misuse them. So one simple analogy: we have knife. We can use the knife to prepare really delicious food, but we can also use the knife to kill people. So microbe is the same case. And we also must be aware that microbes are also God's creature, and they need to be appropriately appreciated, and yeah, of course, not misused in any way. Yeah,
Right.
that's basically the conclusion.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Said Daniel, for the sharing. And I agree that when it comes to any organisms, including microbes, we as Khalifa we can make use of them for our advantage, but we have to ensure that we do not abuse or misuse them that can bring about facade or harm or
Yes,
destruction to the
exactly.
environment. Right. Thank you, Mr. Said Muhammad Daniel, for shedding some light on microorganisms, which I hope our discussion today will be beneficial to all our listeners.
Yeah,
Hopefully, with your explanations now, we have a better understanding and appreciation towards these creatures which we cannot see with our naked eye, as you said at the
yeah,
beginning.
yeah.
Again, before we end, let me record my sincerest gratitude to you and all the best in your research.
Thank you
Hopefully,
so much.
your research can be something that can bring about a great benefit,
I mean,
especially
thank
in the
you.
area of biomedicine. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all the time that we have for today. Until we meet again next week with another topic, stay tuned to Radio Ikim, Inspirasi Influenza Islami. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.